You'll understand exactly why my message is in the storm. So if you're taking notes, because note takers are history makers. Period, guys. Thank you for doing that with me. I appreciate it. Pull out your phones, take some notes. I promise I won't yell at you for texting. You're taking notes. I get it. Okay, really quick. How many of you are like terrified of storms?
Last night was you.
Okay, how many of you are a little bit scared of storms? Just a little bit. Okay, don't lie. None of you are raising your hand because I can't see you. Are you get nervous? You wake up and you're like, ooh, I'm scared.
Yeah.
Oh, my car was gonna fly.
One time I went to my basement because I was scared.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so listen. I am terrified of storms because obviously the tornado hit my house in 2017, I think. It was terrifying. It was awful. So I have a little bit of emotional trauma that I didn't ask for. But when I lived at home, I was fine because in my brain I was like, you know what? We survived a tornado. We're good. We're not going to die from a tornado. We're going to die from something else. It's going to be fine. Anyway, I just thought we would survive all tornadoes, and I would make fun of my little brothers because they would freak. Ty would cry, we have to grab everything, I'm so scared. And I'm going to tell on him because he's not here, but he's a big crybaby when it comes to storms. But now that I'm married, I live with Parker, and he is not a tornado survivor. So he doesn't know. So the whole time a storm's going on, I'm like, you have to grab the stuff. You have to sit like this. You have to be ready in case this happens. And he's like, standing outside waiting for the storm to come. And I'm like, no, you're not a survivor. You have to listen to me. Like, I know what I'm talking about. Also, we live by the Oak Grove football stadium. And I guess it's like us Green Valley people don't know about this because we don't have this. But Oak Grove is I think it's like a storm shelter for people who don't have storm shelters or something. And so instead of hearing tornado sirens, this man goes over the speaker and starts yelling there is a tornado, please find shelter immediately. So I was sleeping one night, and all of a sudden I heard this man screaming, and I literally get up and I'm running around the house like a crazy person because I was so terrified that we were under attack and we were going to die. So it was fine. There was just a storm and he was telling us to take shelter. But storms are scary. I don't like them. If you're scared of them, it's okay. You can tell me next time. We can talk about it. In the Bible, there's a pretty memorable storm that is talked about frequently in sermons, and it's a storm that occurred right after Jesus has fed the 5,000. Everybody knows that story. You know, he takes the bread and the fish and multiplies it, feeds 5,000. Okay, so it was right after this. So we pick up in Matthew 14, 22 through 33. Immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and cross to the other side of the lake, while he sent the people home. After sending them home, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. Night fell while he was there alone. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came towards them, walking on water. When the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. In their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost!" Kind of like the man yelling over the intercoms. "It's a ghost," but Jesus spoke to them at once. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Take courage, I am here." Then Peter called to him, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water." "Yes, come," Jesus said. So Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water toward Jesus. But when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified and began to sink. "Save me, Lord," he shouted. Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. "You have so little faith," Jesus said. "Why did you doubt me?" When they climbed back into the boat, the wind stopped. Then the disciples worshipped him. "You really are the Son of God," they exclaimed. Same thing. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you our big idea, because I'm going to reference back to this throughout my message tonight. But our big idea is I will not look away in the middle of the storm. So please write that down. I will not look away in the middle of the storm. This story is about the same Peter who just watched Jesus feed the 5,000 with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Jesus never left him during that. This is the same Peter who didn't believe they would catch any fish after a long day of fishing and not catching anything, when Jesus told him to move the net to the other side of the boat. When he did that, the nets were filled with fish. Jesus never left him at that time. This is the same Peter who had denied Jesus 3 times before his crucifixion. You know what Jesus did? He asked Peter 3 separate times if he had loved Jesus. He said, "Peter, do you love me?" And Jesus answered yes 3 different times. And guess what? Jesus never left him. If someone's denying me and is like mean to me, I'm not giving them 3 chances. Sometimes I need to give 3 chances, but sometimes that's like really hard as humans to, give chances to people who are doubting us. And so I think that's really cool to see that multiple times he had doubted Jesus and Jesus is still there for him and he is still with him. I want to break up this story from the Bible about Peter and talk about different parts of the story, talking about when Peter walked on the water. First thing that I want to note, Jesus said, "Don't be afraid. Take courage. I am here." So when the storms of your life start to fall on you, Jesus says to not be afraid and to take courage. We all walk through storms. We all have problems. We all are afraid. But Jesus says, don't. Because take courage because I am with you. Second, Peter took his eyes off of Jesus. And I kind of want to talk about this for a hot second. So Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water towards Jesus. But when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified and began to sink. "Save me, Lord," he shouted. This is the same guy who just right before saw Jesus feed the 5,000. And he didn't believe that Jesus was going to save him. Why? Because he looked away from Jesus. Sometimes we can find ourselves in situations like Peter where we can take our eyes off of Jesus and we lose faith in him. We get distracted by the chaos that's going on around us, and it's really hard to keep our eyes on Jesus. When we keep our eyes on Jesus, he can show us what we need to accomplish. He can show us what he's going to do in our lives. We just have to keep our eyes on him. And that's back to my big idea. I will not look away in the middle of the storm. When chaos is going on, when life gets thrown at you, we are going to keep our eyes on Jesus. The third thing, and this is one more thing that I just want to talk about for a sec. Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. "You have so little faith," Jesus said. "Why did you doubt me?" The word immediately really stuck out to me. Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. He didn't wait. He didn't say, "Oh, Peter, you looked away. You're going to drown for a sec, and then I'll save you." He didn't punish him. He didn't let him drown. He didn't talk to him while he was down. He didn't walk away because he had doubted Jesus again and looked away from Jesus. He didn't walk away from that. He immediately reached down and picked him up. When Peter looked away from Jesus in the middle of his storm, Jesus immediately reached down and grabbed him. Hebrews 13:5 says, "God has said, 'Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you.'" And I think that's something that we forget a lot. Avery, do you want to come on up? Sometimes it feels like Jesus has walked away, but it's only because we looked away. I think I put that, yes, write that down. Sometimes it feels like Jesus has walked away, but it's only because we looked away. The minute we position ourselves to look at Jesus, to worship him, is the minute we feel his presence. Sometimes life gets really heavy, and sometimes things just don't go our way. Sometimes it feels like nothing good is happening to us in our lives, and the first person we blame is Jesus. We think, why is this happening to me? I've been faithful. I've done what you've asked me, and this is how I'm feeling. But listen, sometimes we don't know why bad things happen to us, but Jesus is always turning it for good. And sometimes we don't know what that good is, but I promise you, when you turn and you're looking at Jesus, that's what's good. He's going to bring you peace. He's going to bring you understanding. When you're looking at him, he brings you peace, and that's good. But on top of that, he also turns any evil into good. Genesis 50:20 says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. He brought me to this position so I could save the lives of many people." Some of us are in this season of waiting for the good. We are waiting for Jesus to turn things into good. But let me tell you something. If we are holding on to our hurt, he can't take it to turn it to good. If we're holding on to whatever we're going through, he can't take it and turn it for good because we're holding on to it. We have to give that over to him. I'm pretty sure I talked about that last time I spoke. We've got to give it to him. 2, If we look away from Jesus, we can't see him anymore, and we lose sight of him. Okay, I'm going to share a story that I did not think I was going to share. This is a story that I hope none of you can relate to, but this story is something that I find myself still waiting for God. If you know me, you know that I've always wanted to be a mom. Growing up, I was the mom of my family. I had 2 little brothers, and they were my babies. I would tell everybody that my number one fear is that I would not be able to have kids. I did everything growing up to make sure that I'd be able to have kids one day. I was very cautious, and also I'm sharing this story just because I feel like there's someone in here that needs to hear it, or I would not have shared this. On May 4th of this year, I found out I was pregnant and I was going to be having a baby. I was on top of the world and my dream had finally come true. A week later, I found out I was going to be losing the baby. And then a week after that, I lost the baby. All of my nightmares became my reality, and I was so mad at God. I didn't understand why he would do this to me, because it's the one thing I've wanted more than anything in my life. I didn't want to go to church. I didn't want to see anyone. It was really hard when people texted me because it reminded me of it. I didn't want to be around anyone. I struggled. It was rough, guys. I thought, why me? I serve. I come on Sundays and I serve the kids. I'm here on Wednesdays. And I've been faithful, and I'm pretty good at hiding it. I tried my best to hide it. But when we went to camp, I was really struggling at this point because I knew it was going to be a week full of hard nights and nights that were just going to challenge me. I was still mad at God at this point. It was really hard for me to be there. There was an encounter I had with a student at camp, and everything was just lifted off my chest. I could feel God's presence more than I've ever felt in my whole life. It was because I was speaking life over this student, and I was worshiping and praising God more than I've ever had. And he just brought this peace over me that I've never felt before. And I just knew that even though things right now are not what I wanted them to be, and I'm still not getting the answers that I want, it's going to be okay. I'm still living this reality out. I don't know what my future holds. I'm terrified of what the future has to hold. I'm not getting any of the answers I want, but I do know this more than I have ever known in my life, that you have to point your eyes into the direction of Jesus. The minute you look away, the minute you run, you start to not only lose yourself, but you lose that connection that you have with Jesus. He's ready to pick you up immediately, guys. He's not going to let you drown. Big or small, all of your problems matter to Jesus. If it matters to you, it matters to him. You just have to look at him, and you have to believe that he is there no matter the storm you're facing. No matter what you're walking through, he is there. And guys, I get it. I get it when you feel like that God is far, far away. That you feel like he's taken his hand off of your life. Or maybe you've just never felt like God has been there in your life. But are you looking at him? Are we adjusting our life to be looking at him? Because I found myself slipping from that, and I was broken. Sometimes we can't always tell what the good is, but when we are focused on Jesus, he brings peace in our lives. He heals us, and that will always be good. And there are some of us in this room that are walking around with storms, big or small. There are some of us that are walking around with storms, and we don't know what to do. We've come to church, we come up front, We raise our hands, we worship, we tell the youth pastor, we tell leaders, we go down front at camp, we pray together, we've been prayed for, and we still are in the middle of this storm. I don't know what your story looks like. I don't know what your storm looks like. I don't know what you're walking through, but I do know that if your eyes are focused on Jesus, everything will be okay. The minute you look at him, and the minute you turn to him, and the minute you give your life to him, he's not going to let you drown. He's never going to leave you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. He is always there, and he takes what the enemy has meant for evil and he turns it for good. We just have to believe that. And in the middle of our storm, we still need to worship. When you lift your hands, it's a sign of surrender. You're saying, God, please use me. God, heal me. God, fix me. God, I'm here. I'm ready for what you have for me. There's some of us walking around as if everything is okay when we're in the middle of a big storm. We're so distracted by the horrible things going on around us that we aren't focusing on Jesus. We are not believing that he is right there in the midst of our storm, but I promise you he is. I promise you he's there. Our big idea is I will not look away in the middle of the storm, and I want you to never forget that. Write it down, write it on a sticky note, put it in your bathroom mirror, put it in your car. I will not look away in the middle of the storm, because I get it, guys. Life is hard. Life is distracting. The things of this world will distract you and try and pull away from what God wants for you. We have to keep our eyes on the prize, really. We have to keep our eyes on Jesus, no matter what storm we're going through, big or small, because he's there for you. He's ready to pick you up. He won't leave you. It's our job to just look at him.